Welcome to A Bit of Insight with Lisa Mosbey, your weekly dose of health, wealth, and everything else. Today we continue our grief and gratitude series. So thanks for joining me. I'm Lisa Mosbey, the host of A Bit of Insight. You may recognize today's guest. Ben Curtis is an award-winning actor on both stage and screen. He is best known as that dude, you're getting a Dell guy. But Ben's journey didn't stop with fame. He's also a 9/11 survivor whose pain and PTSD became the very doorway into his wellness journey. He's now a certified yoga and meditation instructor, a chief well-being officer, and founder of the Dude Nation. And we're going to dive into that today. It's a national community for men's well-being and support across all walks of life. Like his father, who was his best friend and greatest influence before passing suddenly 4 years ago, Ben also officiates weddings, which I think is it fits perfectly with his personality. Wait till you get to meet him. I know you'll agree with me. Through the grief of that profound loss, he's been propelled into powerful work. These last 3 years, he's been holding sacred space for men around life, death, and rebirth. Currently, he is walking alongside his mother as she journeys through the hospice care program. And at the same time doing that, he's pursuing certification as a grief counselor and mental health counselor. His story is one of resilience, reinvention, and a deep commitment to serving others through both grief and gratitude. It's an honor for me to introduce you to Ben, and it's even more of an honor for me to get to sit with him and have this conversation. So thank you so much for being with me today, Ben.
Wow, what a beautiful introduction. Thank you for having me. This is
Oh,
a pleasure and two of my favorite topics in the world.
yeah.
Thank you for having this show.
Yeah, my pleasure. I want to kick it off and start with we're both entrepreneurs, and we actually met through an executive empowerment workshop or network. And so we've known each other. I think it's 3 years now that we've been engaging weekly, several times a week in the mornings. And so I want to start from that entrepreneur perspective, because I think that's
Mm,
predominantly who's watching this is entrepreneurs. As we face loss, we don't have a paycheck to fall back on. We don't have, grief support or financial support through our companies. So I want to know, you're a little bit ahead of me. I just celebrated my dad's second heavenly anniversary, and
mm.
I know yours is number 4 for your dad. How did you get through that time, and still be able to grieve? Because if we don't work, if we kill what do? We eat what we kill or something, I think is a famous
Yeah.
saying. If we don't work, we don't have that money coming in. So let's start there. Let's go back to that space and that time when you kind of had to pull up your britches and keep going because you're
Mm.
married, you have responsibilities, and yet you had an unexpected loss of your dad.
Yeah. Thank you. I think it's a great question. Well, first of all, a shout out to the Morning Rush, and that's the community where we met, which is great because it's free and it's one of the most amazing networking communities for entrepreneurs and also places of growth, both I'd find entrepreneurial and spiritual in a way. I feel really affirmed being there. And to get to know you through this process has been part of that affirmation. Knowing you caring for your parents throughout this. And I wondered how you did that. So after losing my father, who was also my best friend, I've seen people lose a lot of, fathers and parents and with different relationships. Some they weren't talking to, some they hated them, some were traumatic, some were wonderful. But my dad and I really got close. My parents divorced when I was 12. And actually, it was in a way freeing because there wasn't that trauma in the household anymore. I got to watch my mom go through her healing process and really get close with her because it was really just her and I in the household at that point. I have a big sister that moved on. And then I got closer with my father, who had more time to show up and be an even greater father. And I watched him. He was a minister, an Episcopalian minister, so he was super open-minded and encouraged me to learn from everyone. And he helped people die. And so, but when he died, he had a folder that we had gone over a million times about his funeral. And the irony was when he died, the folder was nowhere to be found. But we were well prepared. And it had me think about and my sister is a big part of this too. We had to get work on our relationship in order to get through it. And when it happened, I thought, oh my God, this is horrible. Everyone has to go through this. Wait, is this what it's like for everybody? How is anyone, why are we not talking about this? It was so profound. And then about a year later, my wife and I decided to try to have children. And I realized, oh, this is it. This is my purpose. I'm going to be a dad. She got pregnant and then had a really traumatic miscarriage that led to her not wanting to have kids anymore. And then yet my dad muscle was turned on. So I was also going through this kind of trauma and grief space of how to heal through that. And also realized no one was talking about miscarriage or about the trauma that can have or the grief on the man or the woman, and that men also lose a child in that. And so the only thing I could show up to answer the question, the only thing I could really, how I was able to do it is I asked for help. I had the gift of having a personal assistant through some of that who was able to manage a few of my emails and things. And there was a men's group that I was a part of. And it's because I had started it. And I had my first coach who was a business coach and said, you're not going to graduate this program until you start your men's group. And so I did. And that really, those guys said, I know you're leading this, but we're holding you this week. And through both my dad's loss and our miscarriage, these guys, some of whom I barely knew, showed up at my door, on the phone in ways I'd never really seen before. Even my own friends I know we have a hard time doing that for each other. And so that's where I began to learn, oh, wow, the only thing I could really show up for was that. So some of my business did fall through. I wasn't able to show up for everything. And I'll close with this, that I really believe we all should have funding and care to be able to grieve, to have time off for a death, to have time off for a birth, to have time off for sickness, right? And so that we deserve that in this country, and that's something maybe I'll end up fighting for. Who knows? I'm not trying to be a politician just yet, but I think at the beginning of your sentence, you said of that you said something really beautiful about taking the time, and we don't get paid to do that, but I wonder why not, and maybe we could.
And maybe we have to plan for that as entrepreneurs. It's something to think about
Mm,
because, like you said, we're all going through it. Nobody's going to get out of here, but we need to be prepared for that time. I was fortunate enough to be able to walk away from my business to take care of my parents for those 4 years that I was their primary caregiver. And then the other thing that really stood out with what you shared was being able to ask for help.
mm,
I struggled with that a lot, but there were a few people close to me that I just said, I can't do this. I can't get up one more day. I don't know how to do this anymore. And like your situation where they showed up at your door, I had a friend, I was losing a lot of weight just from
mm,
stress. And I had a friend show up and she said, your clothes look like crap. Everything is hanging on you. She said, we're going through your closet. And so we spent the day and we took everything out of my closet. We had a huge pile that we donated and it felt so freeing. And I had new sheets on the bed and I had all this spaciousness. 3 days later, she showed up. She had gone to Goodwill and she had bought a new wardrobe, series of outfits, not an entire wardrobe, but practically an entire wardrobe. And just, they weren't new clothes, but they fit me
mm,
and she picked them out. And I didn't have the energy or the thought process to be able to do that for myself.
mm,
And what that makes me think about is all the people that said, if you need me, call. Well, I wouldn't have even known what to say. I didn't know what to say. But the people that were proactive, the people that called the grocery store, called Instacart and said, deliver a bag of groceries to the front step. The people that had food sent to the house, because you can't think about feeding yourself or you can't think about taking care of yourself. And having those people and they weren't necessarily close friends, they were acquaintances from
mm,
church, and people that I knew from work, but they had experienced loss and understood what we need, and that was profound for me. And when you're sharing that with the men's group, I think it's a tough spot for men to be in, especially because, we can't cry in public. I know I have some old stories that I witnessed from my brother and from my dad. How
Mm,
do you bring that out of men to be able to support each other and to be able to be vulnerable in those spaces?
mm. That's a great question. I mean, we may be exploring that for centuries because, men tried to take over and it's been, we've not done a great job.
You have
And
a
so I,
gift. I've met some of the men that you work with, and I've heard how, their testimonies of how you've poured into their lives and how you've created these safe spaces that I
mm,
talked about in your introduction. So I know you're kind of laughing and blowing it off, but not to put you on a pedestal or create any pressure,
yeah,
but I think you're doing something extraordinary. And I want people to know that it's available to their spouses, their husbands, their fathers, their brothers, whoever needs that help. There's a safe space for them.
yeah. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I think I was also laughing because it's a big thing. I'm wrestling, I'm taking on something big, but I am finding ways that's really effective. And I'd say number one is being the change I want to see in the world. And my father really taught me that. He was a beautifully vulnerable, outspoken, deeply spiritual, deeply intellectual, but also hilarious man who never took himself too seriously,
Yeah.
even to the end. And I think that those kind of things are, when I started researching what men need and want and looking at other men's groups, including many places where I've not felt welcome or included, that have felt more ostracizing to me, like, oh, no wonder I feel safe only with women. That was my experience for decades. I have a big sister and a mom, and I had a father who could be sensitive, but there was something incomplete for me around a safe space of masculinity, and that was fun and vulnerability and authenticity. And so I saw those are really, really important to have and that I was the only man in a lot of spaces I was going to, healing spaces or any kind of gatherings. And so I felt like maybe this is something that we need more of. And what are the groups doing that are working and what are the ones that maybe aren't working? So I've created a whole organization dedicated to that, the Dude Nation. So we have part of that journey in naming it that is that dude used to be a source of shame in my life, even though it was some of the greatest success I had as the Dell computer dude and the face of Dell Computers, and people would yell dude at me, but it was also a time when I was not doing well, when I was facing a lot of grief. September 11th had happened then. I was wrestling addiction and alcoholism and a lot of stuff just to try not to feel my feelings. I didn't know how to cope with the grief. And it was a few men in recovery that I found were a safe space for me that I could talk to. And then I was leading retreats for sober men. And I thought, this is great, but what about all the guys that aren't sober or aren't in recovery? We all need this. So now I've got these spaces, the Dude Dojo, which is a weekly men's group online. So we have men from all over the country join. Sometimes there's actually a few different countries involved now as well. And also the Dude Deep Dive, which is coming up this October, which is a 2-day deep dive into life, death, and rebirth. So actually coming back home to ourselves, letting go of what's no longer working. And we also are looking at the themes of grief and growth, including lead a circle every it's tomorrow night, September 11th, but I do it once a month, grief and growth circles to hold space for any of us who need, a safe space to actually grieve or talk about this. And I'm finding that being around other people who have experienced the loss, also who have an idea of or who have walked through some of this, is can be really freeing and very affirming, and to find places where people get it and to reach out for that. And if you don't know where to go, that I could be that person that connects you. So I think what I'm doing really well also is being a resource, not just a one-stop shop. That's not what I'm trying to be for the Dude Nation, is that we're a resource to everything. If it's a therapist, if it's um, a life coach, if it's a business coach, if it's whatever that is going to bring you back to yourself, or maybe it's just coming to get involved in a service project and having fun and playing again. or just being realizing that, there's some other guys out there who get it. Because loneliness is a big, big thing for all of us right now.
What comes to mind is you're redefining masculinity through grief. Because I
Mm,
think a lot of times we think that when people cry, it's a sign of weakness, but it may not be a sign of weakness. Or to express the feelings that you're having, to say them out loud, to share that with another person, you know, not necessarily something that we defined when we define masculinity. So,
mm.
what happens when men share openly and they're vulnerable in these environments? What changes do you see them experience in
Mm.
bringing out that masculinity, bringing more of that masculinity out because they're not stuffing these emotions?
Yeah, this is a great question, Lisa. It's like you could see into us, and really helping bring it out. It helps us be in both our masculine and feminine, and I think being in a safe space where you can be however you are. I mean, you could be totally enraged the whole time, really angry, or you could be in a place of softness and vulnerability, and to know that no one's going to judge you and we're going to hold space for you. We may hold you accountable or to some integrity to take care of yourself or to speak up or just to listen. But I think what I see happen is men uh coming and expressing that and then realizing you're not going to die or be like shunned from society, and you're like, oh my god, I feel better, I feel lighter,
It's
maybe I
lifted.
was carrying all this stuff. It's just I think it's starting to drop the weight, realizing that a lot of the weight that we carry, men have been trained to carry, doesn't belong to us. We've been taught to shoulder all this burden, and people, I mean, I hear partners all the time say, "Please stop shouldering all that burden. Just be present with me."
Yeah.
Um, that we really get wrapped up inside of ourselves, and in being in a circle, being in a space with other people, the men themselves, we do the work just by being ourselves, because you start to see yourself reflected in others. You start to get affirmed in a space where you're safe. You can practice saying the things that may feel scary to say, or you can practice having feelings that may not feel safe to have, even with your wife or your children. You can practice having hard conversations, and in our organization we also practice having fun
Yeah.
and maybe getting in touch with your inner child again. And we hold each other accountable to have healthier boundaries and learn to love ourselves through how we also treat our partners. Are we tending to our family? But really, the focus is putting the oxygen mask on ourselves first. So if you
Yeah.
don't know what you need, it's hard to communicate your needs, to get those needs met, and then to be able to show up for others. And I think it's just learning. There's multiple generations in a lot of our groups as well, and a lot of different backgrounds, and so hearing different perspectives. I mean, there's someone who's been through, name it, and one of the guys in here has been through it. And that is really, I think, for any human to know you're not alone and someone else gets it, or maybe I'll make it through this, or maybe asking for help is cool, or maybe, oh, I'm getting affirmation for crying. I mean, crying is one of the most healthy things we can do. So to at least, we celebrate every guy every week. Like, tell us something you're afraid to celebrate about yourself, or you think you shouldn't say out loud, or like, even if you made your bed, you're really proud, we'll cheer on you for that.
Yeah.
But we hear guys starting to say like, oh no, I set a healthier boundary, or turns out because I said no to my kid this week, actually they love me more now, they actually trust me more now, or I'm learning to trust myself again. So yeah, I think I've said it.
Well, it's what I'm hearing is there's also a role model component to it because you
Mm-hmm.
don't know what you don't. For me, I'll speak to me. We don't know what we don't know. I don't know what I don't know. And when I get into certain environments, even like the morning rush where we're both a part of, I hear other people's experiences. I've been an entrepreneur for 40 years. Things have changed in 40 years. I don't want to be one of those people that has 1 year of experience that I've done 40 years at a time, just keep repeating it. I want to grow and
Yeah.
expand and learn. And that happens by either having mentors or role models, getting into environments where you can see what other people are doing. And I can see how sitting in a circle in that group, you see other people sharing, and it's like you're willing to take a risk because that's what creates the safety is other people can go before you. You don't have to be the leader. And then eventually someday you are the leader. You are the one that goes first. You are the role model for the rest of the group. And bringing in all the different generations to support and educate, because maybe some people who were raised differently with a different definition of masculinity can learn from
Mhm.
the younger people in the room, and the younger people can learn I can't even say that word, stoicism.
Stoicism.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or learn some things from the older generation. And we get that as women a lot. I mean, I've been in circles since Girl Scouts, if you will, but I love that this is now available and public for men. Like you're putting it out there in such a big way and letting people know. So
Yeah. You
how do
keep it
you
really
you're
simple and accessible too. I wanted to mention that. Like it is public in a way that you can have access for free for $50 a month, for $200 a month. You can come to a retreat. There's a lot of pay what you can things as well. And
yeah,
just workshops and master classes or just a community to listen. So we have a free community call every month too that men can come check out and just you can be a fly on the wall and listen. Oh, maybe I will share. I
yeah.
always cough up my stuff right away because that helps open the space and trust that it's safe. And I think that's what it is, like the mentorship. You be the change, and you're such a great example of that, Lisa. Like when you shine your light, it gives other people permission to do the same, including your power and your discipline and your integrity. It's really powerful to be around someone else who has that.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah. I want to shift gears and talk about kind of the journey that you're walking right now. I know that you're studying and learning, just you have so much going on. I don't want to spill the beans for everything, but the big one that's resonating with me right now is I just celebrated the 1 year anniversary. My dad was 2 year anniversary. My mom we just had the 1 year anniversary of her being back in the Lord's
Mhm.
arms and being back in heaven. And you're walking through that right now with your mom being on hospice and getting to spend time with her. Tie that experience together with self-care for you, still giving
Mm.
enough time to your wife Cassie and your relationship and your business, and yet we have a finite amount of time with our parents before they pass. So what's going on in your head with some of that stuff? I'm sure that there are listeners here who are on that exact same path at this moment, and
Mm.
do you have anything to say to those folks?
Yeah, absolutely. Ask for help. Share your heart on loudspeaker as often as possible. Your friends really, really want to help you. People do want to show up. They just don't know how. So saying, maybe you can just listen, or I just need to talk. I don't need a fix. I just need to talk. That's one of the best things to start. Do you have a moment to listen? And then let it out. Just I'm just like a lot of the times, and be really patient and compassionate with yourself. So, before I went in this focus of the men's organization, I'm still doing this. I work with executives on self-care and work-life balance. And any high performer, whether it be a musician, an actor, an executive, any of us, on or off stage, it's all about taking care of ourselves. By the way, we're all high performers in some way. Our parent, like taking care of parents, being parents. In this world today, it's so intense, and we're getting hit so many ways that we are in this world of hyper high performance in that way. And so I would say slowing down as I have a practice every day where I ground. I try to take my shoes off every day, no matter the temperature, stand in the grass. Helps that I have a dog that really needs to go out early, but spending time in nature, spending time with my dog, or maybe a child or a friend, or just nature, thinking about being outside. Those moments bring us back to who we are. They also regulate our nervous system. And I try to make space for my grief every day, whether I have it or not, because often I don't know what's going on when grief is one of these things that just comes out of your ear suddenly, and you're just like, how does that, I get confused, anxious, angry, sad, and then so it can look a lot of different ways going through all the stages at once. So if I can just make a little space, a little meditation in the morning, even thinking about it's been really painful for me over the years to think about my father at times, or to try to talk to him without him being physically here. And so I did what my old friend Arnie did, who's now passed on. And Arnie would say, as all his friends were dying, as he was getting older, he said, I just invite them, the spirit of them, to sit with me in my meditation. So sometimes I invite my dad to sit with me in my morning meditation and or help guide me through my day. And then the other thing is I I make sure I talk to someone no matter what, at least once a week. Um, what I'm going through now is anticipatory grief. And so for any of you, I know Lisa, you've walked this when you know someone's going to die. And I mean, we know we're all going to die, but when they're in their death process, like my mom said, I'm going into hospice care. She's at home, thank God, because I can spend a lot more time with her, and hospitals are a whole nother thing. So the thing is, how I'm caring for myself is I'm staying home where I live, and I'm going to see her once a month for a week. And if I need to see her more, I can, but I'm grounding. I'm coming back and I'm grounding. And even my mom says, like, stay and work. I said, yeah, but I'm also going to come see you. So I think that's part of it. And I'm holding space for others, which helps me grieve. And then I also went to two different grief camps at the beginning and the end of the summer, one for adults and one for kids, where I got to volunteer as a counselor, called experience camps. And they're for anyone who's experienced loss. And it's about having an incredible time and finding freedom inside grief. And so I've created those experiences for men also. And, having these men's circles, these guys all start asking me. I get texts, how are you doing? What are you doing to take care of yourself today, Ben? From guys I've never even gotten a hug in person. So these are all parts of my self-care. Take what you want and leave the rest.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a role for gratitude. I talked about this. I know Jeremy and you are connected. He was on the podcast last week, and um, we talked a lot about the
Mm,
gratitude that we experience, and how if you can get into a state of gratitude for the time you get to be with your loved ones, it
mm,
starts to reshape that grief, and it brings light into those darkest days when you can bring back the memories and recall the experiences. And it makes me think of kind of a legacy for my father. I talk about my dad. Oh, my dad taught me this, and he has these isms. We call them Larryisms. Any day above ground is a good day. And so I find myself using Larryisms in places,
yeah.
but it's an ode or an homage, or it's a kind of the legacy of my dad. Those things that I didn't realize how much he had imprinted in me and my behavior and how I show up in my life day
Mm,
to day. And I see that in you. I mean, one of the things, you're officiating weddings like your dad
yeah.
did. And your dad helped people to grieve. He helped people to pass on to the next world. So, like, there's so many things that you do on a day-to-day basis that are kind of the legacy of your father. Do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, I do. And I
Yeah.
have like his picture just up in front of me on the wall. So I look up, and and this is his artwork behind me. So
Oh,
I
cool.
literally have him around me. But he was also everyone's biggest cheerleader. And I love cheering people on. And I think celebrating is one of the greatest things we can do on a daily basis. I celebrate my life every morning. When my dog finds a stick, she is so happy. It's so incredible. And I celebrate her, and I'm like, yes, it's the best thing ever. We have a really good time. And so those things, also being of service. I really need to be of service to other people to get my head out of my rear end. And so why I do all this work, because I also need it. And it reminds me when I show up for other people, when I'm cheering for 10-year-olds who just lost their parents, and I'm like, you're amazing. Like, we're going to have so much fun today. That is healing all over the place, right? For everything I've gone through. And to even get to be like a adult figure for those kids in that moment. And I think that's what life is about, is still trying to enjoy what we do have. And if you need to be angry, let it out. I love the water. Like you, I used one of some of my greatest grief work has been in the ocean, because you can punch it and float in it and yell at it and play in it. surf on it, all kinds of things. But, finding the ways where you can express yourself and ground, and find gratitude and find some joy, because we
Yeah,
are
because
alive. And
yeah.
and that's what the beauty about death is. It also highlights life at the same time.
Mhm. Yeah, I get to watch some of those testimonials from the photos and things that you shared, and the kids saying, "I don't want to go back to my real life. This was awesome,"
Oh
because
yeah.
they got to forget about the pain in their heart for a minute, and they got to experience joy again, just running around and
Mm,
playing and being in the water and being in the woods and being with other kids that weren't asking them, "How are you doing? How are you doing? How are you handling this?" Those questions, like just. Oh, stop already. Like try to change my uh I don't know how I want to say this. Um, I don't want to hear those questions. They aren't
mm,
supportive. They aren't helping. They're actually pulling me down when we think about that. I'd rather somebody share a fun memory of my dad or a fun memory of my mom or, oh my gosh, you're so much like your mother when you do X, Y, Z,
mm.
edify and lift up those people. Stop asking how I'm doing. I'm grieving. Life sucks at the moment. I
Yeah.
don't want to have these feelings and these experiences. And I don't want every single person to be asking me about it. And I think we don't know what to say. We don't know what to write in that card, or we don't know what to write on that Facebook post when somebody posts, I lost my mom today, or my mom went to be with the Lord today. Um,
Mm.
but I still think we have to show up for them. But
Yeah.
I really want to help and coach people along those lines of what can we do to show up for people and let them know that we're available. And like, go back to what I said. Sometimes you can't eat or you can't dress yourself. Don't ask what they need. Anticipate it and don't worry if it doesn't land. At least give it a try because I think that's how
Yeah.
we need to support each other sometimes.
Yeah. Like acts of love, acts of kindness.
Mhm.
I was seeing like a New Orleans second line when you're speaking. So for those of you who don't know, that's the music, the march, the experience you may see or hear in New Orleans or movies of New Orleans where people are marching down the street and they're going to a funeral, but they're celebrating this person out loud. And I always thought, there's this great sign when I think it's gosh, I'm blanking on his name. Oh my gosh, one of Dr. John. He's one of my favorite New Orleans artists. When I die, I want a second line.
Okay.
And that's people, and that's one of the things we get to do now. And I've started to do more in our retreats. Why I say it's a life, death, and rebirth is because we also talk about how do you want to die? Do you want to have music? Do you want to have people around? Where do you want it to be? What if you got to have a say in that? And that's actually an act of living to be able to own your death and how you want to die and talk about that can be so freeing for us. It could be really scary.
Yeah.
But also those things start giving us uh it's like we don't have to worry about that stuff. We can be more present when we think of the joy. Like, do you want people to sing to you or just tell you how much they love you? I said, I want my friends cheering, like, you're awesome. You did so great.
Yeah.
And and I think singing is always a great thing, that we can do with people too, is really healing, whether it's with ourselves, even just humming, or with someone else listening to music. I've just gone to friends' houses and just put music on and just hung out.
We had music playing in my dad's hospital room for 4 days, and then I had a nephew who was reading scripture constantly. If there
Mm,
was a quiet moment, he'd just whip out the book and read from my dad's Bible, reading scripture. And so just having that, no beeping of the noises and stuff. We knew he was passing, so they turned off all the machines and things. And I couldn't have orchestrated a more beautiful passing. There were 18 people in the room with him when he died.
mm.
But the reason that I'm doing this whole series of grief during October is my mom and dad were married on Halloween. They had back in the
Oh
day,
wow.
wedding licenses would expire. And so they had expired. I can't remember. I think it was 3 or 4 times. My dad was back from, the army military in the 1964. And he said, if we don't get married, the license expired Saturday. If we don't get married, I'm not asking again. And so they went and got married on Halloween.
Good for
By the
them.
justice of the peace and went to a Halloween party. So my entire life, we had a Halloween party, and
Mm,
people saw me 25 years later and say, "I remember when your mom made Raggedy Ann costumes," or "I remember this." So for my mom and dad's inurnment. We did it on Halloween at the grave. I got permission from the cemetery to actually put their ashes in trick or treat bags, and we had them inurned together. And it was their 60th wedding anniversary. Everybody wore Halloween costumes in the
Oh,
cemetery,
wow.
and then we went and had we my dad. My mom worked nights and my dad would bring home pizza every Saturday. Standing order at Carboni's Pizza in Cottage Grove. And so we had a pizza party and played music and Halloween, things at a Carboni's not the one that we went to when we were kids, but one close to the cemetery where we had them buried at. So we
Oh,
celebrated, and we were telling stories and laughing, and there were tears, of course, there always is, but I still get cramps in my cheeks when I think about that. And my sister was a
I
big
have
part
them
of
just listening
orchestrating.
to
I
you.
know, it was
Yeah.
so great to be able to do
Oh, it's
that.
so moving.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had an uncle who his brain was burnt when he was 9 years old. So he lived most of
Mm,
his life with, just different mental challenges. He had schizophrenia. And when he passed, he was an avid music fan. He loved music, and he was in the same cemetery. And so this was during COVID. We got permission from the cemetery to actually have an internment, or yeah, he was actually in a casket. So when they did the service, we had big, huge speakers and had his music collection there. And one of my
mm,
nephews was spinning records in the cemetery playing his favorite music, and then we all told stories about how he poured into our lives over the years that he was with us. So um,
wow.
it can be whatever you want it to be. And I love that you said that and you brought that celebration word into
Mm,
this, because I think that's what it should be. We're done. We've
mm,
completed this phase of our worldly existence. Let's celebrate those people that have gone, or have done what they've done, how they've lived their life. I think that's beautiful.
yeah. Thank you. And I appreciate you sharing so much about your family and the rituals you've done. I think that's something I call it ritual because it is that. And we can create all kinds of rituals that help us honor someone. And this is why I love being in a space that's there's other people and it works because you hear things from other people and you're like, oh my God, wow, I never thought about death like that. There's
Yeah.
even after going to camp, I met an amazing woman, Marissa. Blanking on her last name, but she's on TikTok and it's like Marissa Rose, and she does death humor. And she lost both her parents in a really tragic way, and humor has been so healing for her
Mhm.
to kind of come to terms with it.
Yeah.
And she does it in, really funny ways, like, surprise, I'm pregnant. Why aren't you? No, nothing, no reaction. It like turns to them and they're urns. They're not and like stuff like that. It's like, it is tragic. And maybe we can also laugh. And that also helps us cry because they're really similar emotions.
Yeah.
Um, was it oh no, it wasn't you, but I was feeling you today. It's right after the morning rush. I heard the quote um from my friend Daniel Tuttle, who's a meditation teacher and healer, and he had heard it today that our body reacts the exact same way to anxiety as it does to excitement. So we have all the same chemicals going on. It's just how we think about it. And so even in grieving, it's just energy, right? That needs and wants to come out. Our tears actually can be extremely healing. Science has proven they need to come out. And that those can actually bring so much relief and joy as well. And so part of grief I'm learning is also gratitude. I mean, I've heard people say, I wouldn't take back that horrible death because here's what I'm doing today as a result. It's given me a whole new lease on life. I'm getting to talk to people in a way that I never thought possible and be a space for people to come talk to me that I never, I dreamed of, but I didn't see myself starting to pursue these things. I never thought I'd want to talk about grief on the daily basis. Now it's my favorite topic, really, because I think there's so much healing available in it. And I was thrilled that that's what you wanted to talk about today.
Beautiful. Do you have a message for our listeners why no one has to grieve alone? I mean, that's what comes to mind for me when we're having these conversations. We've talked about asking
Mm,
for help. Do you have any final words, final message for our
yeah.
listeners about grief?
Yeah, we're not designed to. I mean, you can grieve alone, but we're human beings, and beings need each other. We co-regulate through our nervous systems. So being around energy that it's healing or affirming is really, really good for us. It's cathartic. We actually sometimes need to, like your friend, pull you out of that space and move your body or go for a walk. You'll find when you exercise, like Jeremy may have spoken about this. He had this beautiful video where he was working out and he broke down crying. It's because he actually started using his body, and we store this energy. So allow yourself to be held, allow yourself to break down, make space for that, and be gentle with yourself. And at all possible, allow someone else the chance to be there for you, because that also helps them feel better about themselves. People will want to be there for you. So if we can start to say, I receive or I accept, then it actually creates so much more possibility and healing in the world. And no matter what you've been through, this is also going to help you help someone else. So don't forget that, and to celebrate the miracles all around us all the time.
Life goes on even after death, and that's what our loved ones would want for us. So we have to find a way,
Mm-hmm.
find our way back to joy. You don't need to rush the grief process. They can work simultaneously. You can have joy in the same day that you're grieving and sad and having those memories come up. So no rules. There's no rules. Let the rules go out the window and experience all the feelings that you're having. Where do people get in touch with you? You're on a path to becoming a grief and mental health counselor. I'm sure that there's folks on here that would love to learn from you, or maybe even experience the Dude Dojo or some other part of Dude Nation. How do folks get in touch with you?
That's a great question. Go to thedudenation.com, thedudenation.com, and there is you can book a call with me, you can get more information, you can see everything we're talking about. There's a grief circle for September 11th, tomorrow night, which all proceeds go to the Tunnels to Towers Foundation, and it's free for first responders. So if you know one, it is honor 911 is the code. But it's for anyone. Practice having a conversation or just being inside of that with us. And I'd be honored to have a conversation with any of you or anyone in your life. You don't have to be a man to be part of the community, but it definitely is designed for those of us. And we also serve young men too. So if there's anyone who's interested, no matter what age you are, whether you're old, young, somewhere in between, retired, or just getting started in life, we would love to be a resource for you on your journey, and for parents as well. We're really here for you.
Beautiful. Ben reminds us that grief is not something to get over, but something that we grow with. And that gratitude can actually transform even the heaviest pain into purpose. His journey
Mm.
shows us what it means to lead with heart, to keep showing up for our communities, and to honor those that we've loved by the way that we live now, like the lessons that we've learned from them, and exploring and sharing those with the people that we meet today. So honor your loved ones and come on back next week. Thank you so much, Ben, for being with me. It was a great conversation.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining me on A Bit of Insight. To get more involved with our wellness community, grab a copy of my book, Live Well, Travel Far, or to explore our travel offerings, visit the website at insightcenterforwellness.com. And if today's episode gave you something to think about, leave a review and please share it with a friend. This is Lisa Mosbey reminding you to live well, travel far, and always follow your insight.